want to start with two stories that make the same point. First one is about a man who wakes up on a Sunday morning and he sees his wife sitting on the edge of the bed looking into the mirror, rather forlorn and sad. And he says, "What's the matter, darling?" She says, "Do you know, I wish I was 12 again." And so he thinks to himself, well, my wife says I never listen, but I'm going to remember this. So a few weeks later, it was her birthday. And so he thinks, right, I've got it all planned. He told her to set the day aside, but he wasn't going to tell her what they were going to do. So he takes her to Thorpe Park, and they go on all the children's rides. And after that, they go to the cinema and see the latest Disney cartoon. And finally to McDonald's and have Happy Meals with strawberry milkshakes and a little toy. And so they collapse back into bed at the end of an exhausting day. And he's really keen to know how well he's done. He says, so what was it like, darling? What was it like to be 12 again? His wife looks at him and says, "I was talking about my dress size, you pillow." The man learned that day one of the most important lessons of life, that you can't be 12 again. In fact, you can't even live today again. Time never goes backwards. It always marches forwards. In fact, every morning, 1,440 minutes are deposited into your time bank. And every evening, they are cruelly taken away. What you do with them is what really counts. Second story is about an American businessman who goes on vacation one year to a little Mexican fishing village. And he's standing on the harbour one lunchtime and he sees a little boat coming in to dock with a fisherman on it. And he's curious, so he wanders down to see the man and he says to him, he says, "I'm curious, my friend, why are you coming in so early? It's only lunchtime." And the little Mexican fisherman says, "Well, senor, I caught enough fish for my family." This is a Mexican accent, by the way. "I caught enough fish for my family, senor, and so I go home." And the American says, "Well, what do you do with the rest of your time?" He says, "Well, senor, I sleep late in the mornings, I fish a little, I take siesta with my wife Maria in the afternoon, I play with my children, and in the evening wander into the village and play a little guitar and sip wine with my amigos." The American says, "I am a Harvard MBA. And I can help you. Starting tomorrow morning, you need to stay out fishing longer each day and catch extra fish. And with the spare fish, you sell them to the fishmonger. And you save up the money you make day after day, and eventually you'll be able to buy a bigger boat and catch more fish. And keep saving up the money, and then you'll be able to buy a second boat, and eventually a whole fleet of boats." The Mexican is wide-eyed. "And then what, senor?" "Well, then you can cut out the middleman and you can start selling direct to the wholesaler and keep building up your business, and eventually you can move your headquarters to Mexico City and then one day New York City, from where you can sell your product around the world." The Mexican is amazed. "How long will this take, senor?" "Oh, about 15 or 20 years. "And then what?" he asks. "Well, then, when the time is right, you can float your company on the stock market and make millions of dollars." "Millions of dollars, senor," says the Mexican. "And then what?" "Well, then that's the best bit," said the American. "Then you can retire. Perhaps move to a little fishing village. You can sleep late in the mornings, and in the afternoons play with your children, and take siesta with your wife Maria, and in the evenings wander into the village and play a little guitar and sip wine with your amigos." The Mexican smiles and he says to the businessman, "Sir, these Harvard degrees, are they hard to get?" What a snapshot, though, of the world that we live in, where we're constantly fed the lie that happiness and fulfillment are just around the next corner. And so we play the when-then game. When I get that next promotion, when I get the perfect house, when I find the partner who just understands me properly, then I'll finally have it made. Then I'll be able to slow down a little. Then I'll be happy. And so rarely we hear the wisdom of the old Mexican fisherman. And then what? And then what? What a tragedy if we spend our lives climbing the ladder of success and get to the top and realize that there's nothing there. Or as the American 19th century writer D.L. Moody put it, our greatest fear should not be failure, but succeeding at things that don't really matter. Our greatest fear should not be failure, but succeeding at things that ultimately don't really matter. 2 years ago, I was at a conference in London, much like this. And I was sat at the back and I was listening to the speaker talk, and I suddenly realized something was going wrong. I realized I couldn't really understand what he was saying. It was like a distorted radio was going off in the back of my head. It was suddenly like I was seeing things in slow motion, and I thought, well, maybe I'm tired, maybe I got the flu or something, so I left the conference early, drove back here to Emsworth, and thought I'll sleep it off. And it was like a switch went off inside me, and I just kind of shut down. I suddenly, overnight, went from being quite high-functioning, extrovert, responsibilities to not being able to do anything. It wasn't as though when the phone rang, I didn't want to answer it. Just the thought of looking at who it was on the screen filled me with dread. It's the strangest thing. So I went to the doctor, and he said, you need to stop completely today. I said, well, I've got some important meetings coming up. Maybe I can take some time off in a couple of weeks. He said, Jim, you need to stop completely today. And so he signed me off work for a month, and then another month, and then another month. Eventually I had to leave my job. And that happened at 37. And the doctor said, if you'd have carried on, I don't want to think about what had happened to you at 57. And so while it was one of the hardest times of my life, everything that I relied on about myself and was most proud of was suddenly taken away. I was so grateful for the opportunity to stop and think about my life and reprioritize the value I was putting on some things and not on others. And so through prayer and the support of friends and family and things like cognitive behavioural therapy, I thankfully am on that journey to recovery. And one of the greatest things that I've learned and have sought to cultivate since then is a spirit of contentment. Wanting to learn to be content. St. Paul wrote, if you find contentment, you will have found something of great value. Contentment, you see, is one of life's rarest virtues. To be able to sit in your chair and want for nothing. And the way to find contentment, I'm learning, is to develop an attitude of gratitude. To learn to be thankful. Studies have shown that thankful people are happier, live longer, and have better quality relationships. And the secret of having an attitude of gratitude is to change from having what you want to wanting what you have. The world says happiness is all about having what you want. It's the basis of all advertising. They try to persuade you to have something you want. They give you a want, it's something you don't have. True contentment comes not from having what you want, but from wanting what you already have. I was in Tesco the other day, and there was a couple having an argument in the TV section, so I thought I'd slide along nearby and listen in, just in case it was useful for one of my talks. And the husband was trying to persuade his wife to buy a 60-inch TV. Look at the price, he said, it's such a good deal. We've had our TV for years. But John, said his wife, we only came in for a pint of milk. That's the world we live in. You've got to have what you want. But you know, having a thankfulness attitude, choosing to want what you already have, changes your whole mindset. It makes you look for things to be thankful for, rather than focusing on all the time of what you don't have, everything that's going wrong in your life. It helps you, in fact, to love people and use things, rather than loving things and using people. The 19th century philosopher R.W. Emerson said this, if the stars only came out once a year, we'd all stay up to look at them. As it is, they come out every night, and we never stay up. So this week I set you a challenge, and I said it to myself, to find one thing every day to be thankful for. And see how it transforms your life. Because isn't it true that the easiest things to take for granted are the things we love the most? I was reading about a doctor who, Saturday morning, he'd had a busy day in the surgery. He had to do some shopping, so he took his son with him, and they were going fast around the supermarket. And all the way around, the son kept calling out, "Dad!" He just ignored him. He was so focused on getting the shopping. "Dad!" He kept ignoring his son. Eventually, the son had an idea. He took a few steps back, and he lowered his voice, and he said this, "Doctor!" The man swung round to attention. And the man writing it says this, "That happened 15 years ago, and now my son doesn't talk to me." Ouch. I take a lot of funerals these days, about 100 a year in fact. And as people stand up to talk about their loved one's life, I often think, I wish they could be here to hear the lovely things that are being said about them. It's the great irony of funerals. The one person you're talking about is the one person who can't be there to hear it all. So I'd like to close with a poem that I often read at funerals, and that I sometimes wish I could have read to the person before they died. It's called "The Dash" by Linda Ellis. I read of a man who stood to speak at the funeral of a friend. He referred to the dates on his coffin from the beginning to the end. He noted that first came the date of his birth. He spoke of the second date with tears. But then he said what matters most of all is the little dash between those years. For that dash represents all the time he spent alive on earth. And now only those who love him know what that little line is worth. For it matters not how much we own, the cars, the house, the cash. What matters is how we live and love and how we spend our dash. So think about this long and hard. Are there things you'd like to change? For you never know how much time is left that can still be rearranged. If we could just slow down enough to consider what's true and real, and always try to understand the way other people feel, and be less quick to anger, and show appreciation more, and love the people in our lives like we've never loved before. If we treat each other with respect and more often wear a smile, remembering that this special dash might only last a little while. So when your eulogy is being read with your life's actions to rehash, would you be proud of the things they say about how you spent your dash? And if you're thinking that you're nearing the end of your dash and you got one too many regrets, well, don't be too hard on yourself. You probably made more of a difference than you think. And if you're interested, I'd love to talk to you further. I wish I could stay longer and get to know some of you better over coffee, but it is a Sunday morning, and so I've got a church service to take shortly. But if you'd like to get in touch, my email's in your brochures, and I'd love to hear from you. Have a great conference. God bless you.